Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Creative Writing Lab. Today, we will be talking about how to write compelling characters in fiction. I want to focus on 6 elements, give you 6 main tips that I believe are vital when it comes to writing characters. As we look at each of these tips, I want to show you exactly how they've been executed by a master writer as she was writing a character. The writer I'm talking about is Arundhati Roy. The book is The God of Small Things, and the character we will be examining as we look at those 6 tips is Esther. Tip number 1, we should be able to visualize the character. You don't need to write down every bit of description for them. Just a few really well chosen key details about their appearance that'll catch, that'll snag at the reader's memory. Tip number 2, give the character specific, odd, memorable traits. These should not be to do with the appearance. Maybe their habits. Maybe a person chews her hair when she's nervous. Maybe there's a particular sound associated with this character. Maybe there's a click in their hip when they're climbing the stairs. Maybe they have a secret. Tip number 3, add action. Add some kind of movement. Show us how they move. Show us how they interact with their environment. Let's look at the character from The God of Small Things, Esther. Let's see how Arundhati Roy, the writer, crafted his character using the 3 elements we just talked about. He's 7 years old in this section. Esther had slanting, sleepy eyes, and his new front teeth were uneven on the ends. He was wearing his beige and pointy shoes and his Elvis puff, his special outing puff. His favorite Elvis song was Party. Some people like to rock, some people like to roll. He would croon when nobody was watching, strumming a badminton racket, curling his lip like Elvis. We get how he looks? His sleepy eyes, his uneven teeth help us imagine what his 7-year-old face might be like, right? There's so much we don't get. She doesn't tell us all the details of his appearance. We don't know how tall he is. We don't know if his ears are big. We don't know if his cheeks are round. But we don't need to, because the details she has given us about his appearance really help to make him stick in our minds. Besides his physical appearance, we also get to see what he wants, what he enjoys. We see that he has aspirations of being a musician and entertainer. Just the fact that he chose to put his hair in his hero's favorite, his famous puff, tells us so much about him. Those kind of invisible traits made visible do a lot of work in crafting a character. His lip is curling, he's playing it being cool, he's using a racket as a guitar. Not only does this movement create a sense of energy, but also he's doing this in secret, right? This is one of the delicious things about fiction. This is why we're so drawn to it. We get to see what usually happens in very private spaces. We get to see what people do, how they act, what they want when nobody is watching. The next tip is especially useful when you have a large cast of characters, when your narrative hinges on relationships. Have your characters think about each other in contradictory ways. Let's look at Esther again. We learn early on that Esther is a twin. And so this is an integral part of Esther's identity. People usually see him as a twin before they see him as an individual. Here's how Esther and in the process, his twin seem, appear, feel to their mother. The twins seemed like a pair of small, bewildered frogs, engrossed in each other's company, lolloping arm in arm down a highway full of hurtling traffic, entirely oblivious of what trucks can do to frogs. For contrast, here's how another person, Esther's grandaunt, the family matriarch, sees him. She feels a little differently about him. She says, and she's talking about the twins, they never did look much like each other, Esther and Rahel, and even when they were thin-armed children, flat-chested, worm-ridden, and Elvis Presley puffed, there was none of the usual who's who, which is which, from over-smiling relatives. Let's go back to that first description of Esther pretending to be Elvis at age 7, right? That was from a neutral point of view, not from a mother's protective, fearful love, or from a resentful, bitter caretaker's perspective. It showed us Esther free from the expectations and perceptions of his caretakers, which was useful. These two descriptions, however, the one of his mother and the matriarch, clouded by their ideas of him, by their responsibilities, show us another Esther. They show us Esther in context of his family and influences, so they flesh him out, they round him out even more fully. What's really, really important to note is these character descriptions, so the women might be talking about the twins, right? In the process, though, they reveal a lot about the characters of the people who are thinking these things. So we learn a lot about the mother's love, protectiveness, fearfulness, by how she sees the twins. We learn a lot about the grandaunt's kind of bitterness towards them, and in general. She is a very bitter person in the book. We learn that by how she sees them. Next tip is that the events, the plot of the story, have your characters be affected. If you don't describe the character's transformation and the toll of the events on the character, the reader won't feel them either. I won't give away the plot by telling you what happened to Esther and his twin. I'll tell you that they were separated and their lives were shaken up by this separation. Here's Esther, 23 years later. He's in his 30s now. He's a well-dressed man with a quiet walk. His face grew dark and outdoorsy, rugged, wrinkled by the sun. He began to look wiser than he really was, like a fisherman in a city with sea secrets in him. Once the quietness arrived, it stayed and spread in Esther. It reached out of his head and enfolded him in its swampy arms, sent its stealthy suckered tentacles inching along the insides of his skull, hoovering the knolls and dells of his memory, dislodging old sentences, whisking them off the tip of his tongue. Esther's quietness, this silence, is a bit like a character too. It has a shape, it has action, it seems to have agency. We feel it spreading, we feel it claiming him. We feel how his silence wasn't his choice, it wasn't a willful decision to shut people out, it happened to him. So the plot, the events of the book that took place between Ezra at 7 and Ezra in his 30s have done this to him. We see that Esther, young, raucous, playful, performative, becomes silent. He stops speaking. His words and songs and joys are colonized and silenced. So the event and plot matter more because we can see how they affected him. The character's experience of the experience of the events, how the character was shaped by them, really is what gives the events and the plot meaning. Readers want to see characters pushed into making a decision about transformation. Whether the characters change or grow or not from the beginning of your story till the end doesn't matter as much. What does matter is that they have to make a choice. Are they going to stay the same? Are they going to change? The conditions for transformation, usually in the form of another character, need to be there. So the book offers Esther another catalyst for transformation. His sister returns after 2 decades. Here's Esther after her return. It had been quiet in Esther's head until Rahel came. But with her she had brought the sound of passing trains and the light and shade that falls on you if you have a window seat. The world, locked out for years, suddenly flooded in, and now Esther couldn't hear himself for the noise. His silence is eroding. His sister, simply by appearing, brings chaos and hence life back into Esther's world. Characters need to transform each other. Characters shift each other. So much of good storytelling is the effect they have on each other. You see, a story isn't just a character telling us or thinking about themselves. We need external forces colliding with the character for the above to play out. In their intimacies, in their chase towards those intimacies, is how their characters are truly revealed. Here are the 6 main things I want you to implement when you're writing characters. 1, physical description, physical features, just a few really compelling ones. 2, invisible traits, habits, likes, dislikes, secrets, stuff like that. 3, why am I doing it like this? 3, characters' perceptions about each other. One character describing another character. This reveals both characters more fully. 4, if you're writing an event, the character needs to be changed by it somehow, affected by it somehow. 5, the characters need to be given the conditions for transformation. 6, characters need to affect and shape each other. So grab a notebook and a pen. You're going to do this for 7 minutes. By the end of it, we will have, because I'm going to do this with you too, we will have a solid character sketch. Here's the prompt. Describe the following about a character. 1, a physical detail. 2, a secret that they have. 3, a movement or an action that captures their spirit. That seems like a lot, but if you run out of time before you get to all of them, that's okay. Set a 7-minute timer. Begin. That's our timer. We're done. Next week, we will be talking about characters in non-fiction, the challenges and difficulties of writing lives that actually exist or existed. And we will find solutions, we will find ways to do this with power, beauty, honesty, integrity, and in ways that are fulfilling and cathartic. So, have a wonderful week, and I will see you next Monday.